sorry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start the conversation that we'll be having over the coming 3 days. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the presence of a number of distinguished guests amongst us. In addition to those who are on the podium, and I'll come to that later, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Justice Rose Chizumila of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the Vice Minister of Justice, Democratic Republic of Congo, His Excellency Monsieur Bernard Takeshi, the Vice Minister of Education of the Democratic Republic of Congo, His Excellency Mr. Didier Nitubwanga, His Excellency the Ambassador of Nigeria, Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, His Excellency the Ambassador of Gabon, Mr. Herman Imangole, His Excellency the Ambassador of Uganda, Her Excellency the Ambassador of Uganda, Madame Rebecca Amuge, the Ambassador of the United States to the African Union, Ambassador Jessie Lapin, the Excellency Ambassador Francois Dumont of Belgium, Mr. Odon Skelfotsvet Mills, Deputy Head Permanent Mission of Norway, Ambassador Peter Doyle of Australia, Ambassador Tesfaye Yilma, Permanent Representative of Ethiopia to the African Union and United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Ambassador Konjit Sina-Georgis, former Permanent Representative of Ethiopia to the AU and UNECA, Ms. Eva Molt, the Area Director for Africa, Save the Children, Sweden. You're all welcome here. Distinguished guests, Excellencies, young people, ladies and gentlemen, may I first of all say, on behalf of Mrs. Graça Machel, the chair of our International Board of Trustees, and the entire staff of the African Child Policy Forum, that we are most pleased that you could all be here. As many of you know, Mrs. Graça Machel was the author of the famous and path-breaking report, The Impact of Armed Conflict on Children in 1996. This report led to the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 5177, which created the mandate and recommended the appointment of a special representative on the impact of armed conflict on children. This is a subject very much dear to her, but unfortunately she could not be here for unavoidable reasons, but she sends her warmest greetings. You might wonder why so many of us here on this podium. The simple reason is that everybody matters, and I'll explain. I begin, first of all, with this young representative of youth in Africa, Mariam Ahmad. In about 30 years' time, that is, in 2050, Africa will have 1 billion children and young people. That is more than the current population of Europe, which stands at 741 million. What we do with and what we do about young people will determine the direction of change and our final destiny as a people in this continent. It is important that we listen to what young people have to say, that we listen to what they think. And so we welcome Mariam Ahmed, the Youth Ambassador from Nigeria, and maybe you can applaud Mariam for being here with us. We are most privileged to have with us here Her Excellency Wezero Alamitu, State Minister of Women, Children and Youth. Madam Minister, I'd like to acknowledge publicly your openness your simplicity and seriousness of purpose. As you may know, although you may not acknowledge it, it can sometimes be difficult to work with ministers or senior officials at your level. In fact, if I may turn around the proverbial story of the Prophet Muhammad and the mountain, I can say it would probably be much easier for Muhammad to move the mountain than for us to reach them. But you have always been supportive and willing to help us in our work. And so, thank you very much, Madam Minister, for being here with us. Of course, we cannot do without the African Union in a conference like this on such an important subject. Many of us are critical of the African Union for various reasons, and sometimes justifiably so. Critical we can be and have to be, but we should also remind ourselves of our obligation to be supportive and to work with those who are doing their very best to make it a worthy institution that advances and protects the interests and dignity of all of us. And there are outstanding and good people working with the AU as leaders and as professionals. And we have one of them here, His Excellency Ambassador Thomas Kwesi Quartier, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union. Allow me to be personal, Ambassador Quartier. I have been observing you from a distance, and I have been struck, as many of my colleagues are, by your many qualities, especially your humility, your engagement, and your desire to interact with as many members of society as possible. Despite your many great and impressive attributes, you have always remained a modest, humble, and engaged servant of the African people. We are fortunate to have you as Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, and thank you for being with us, Excellency. Anybody who has traveled across the continent knows how bumpy traveling to West Africa can be, or between West and East Africa can be, even with a comfortable seat with the best airline in the world, Ethiopian Airlines. But that has not deterred His Excellency Mamadou Diakité, President of the Senate of the Republic of Mali, from doing so. Mali is one of the countries that is most affected by conflict in recent years. We're honored that His Excellency is here with us to share his experience and insight. Thank you, Excellency, for being with us as well. We at ACPF do not have illusions about our capacity to bring about change in and of ourselves. However good our advocacy messages may be, we know that we need partners and movements, human rights and child rights groups, that can put pressure on government to act and change. So one of our objectives all along since the establishment of the African Child Policy Forum has been to help create and nurture an Africa-wide movement that can speak out and that can do things on behalf of children. We are gratified that there is now one such organization, the Africa-wide Movement for Children. And I am pleased that we have here with us President Mahamadou Lamine Cissé. And thank you so much, Mahamadou, for being with us today. Finally, a word or two about our good and generous partners. Just as we need indigenous African agents and advocates of change, we also need the support of our international partners. There are two partners in particular that I would like to thank. First, Sweden. Sweden has been and remains one of the leading and most progressive countries in the field of international development and cooperation. There are few countries that can rival it in their generosity and solidarity with the third world, with the poor and the excluded. I'm therefore pleased to salute and welcome His Excellency Torbjörn Pettersson, the Ambassador of Sweden to Ethiopia. may I also point out that his title is rather long. Actually, it's almost a full paragraph, Ambassador to Djibouti, Ambassador to the EU, Ambassador. So welcome, Mr. Peterson. Finally, of course, there are our other partners, our direct partners, who worked with us in the organization of this conference and the work that led up to it. This is Save the Children International. Our partnership with Save the Children goes back to some 15 years or so, when ACPF was first established. That partnership has continued in many different ways. This conference is no exception. We conceived it together, we planned it together, and we are now executing it together, and all without a hitch. Thank you so much to Save the Children. Thank you in particular to Jan Veil, the Regional Director of Save the Children, and his able and most cooperative staff at the Regional Office in Nairobi. Thank you.